Good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's hybrid meeting and presentation with the Los Alamos Mountaineers. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone is aware that this presentation is indeed being recorded. My name is Kristen O'Hara. I'm the Director of Programs with the Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEAK, in Los Alamos, New Mexico. I will be the moderator for tonight's talk. All right, I want to just really quickly acknowledge our wonderful members and donors and volunteers for your generous support. For more details about becoming a member, donor, or volunteer, please visit peaknature.org. Okay, just a few logistics before we get started. Our presenter for this evening will be taking questions via Zoom chat and from our in-person audience. For those of you watching from home, you can find the chat feature on the Zoom app menu bar and type your question to the Peak moderator, that is me, Kristen, in the chat window anytime during the talk, and I will relay them to Helga during the Q&A section at the end of the program. Please remember that not everyone in the room here with us has a microphone. So there may be a delay when we're listening to a question from the live audience. Don't worry, we'll be back in a second and repeat the question for everyone to hear as much as possible. Lastly, after this talk, everyone will receive a short evaluation. Please take a moment to fill that out. Your input helps us improve future programs. Now I will pass it over to Evan Rose, and he will start tonight's Mountaineer meeting. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the July meeting for the Mountaineers. I hope everybody's having a good summer. If you're a school child, you'll be going back to school in about a month. So it's coming to a close for some people. Okay, so let's see. We've got Tim Rennick, who's going to talk to us a little bit about lightning safety. So Tim?
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. Yeah, I'll take a few minutes here to talk about lightning, which seems to be a pretty pertinent topic these days, especially with the last two storms that have rolled through here. Yesterday's storm was a big one, and I can't remember seeing so much persistent lightning most of the afternoon. So I thought I'd just cover it mostly as a refresher for all of us, I'm sure. The information here is from the National Park Service. Pretty good website they have for backcountry lightning safety. So why is this important? I found it surprising a bit that I guess lightning kills more people on average each year than tornadoes and hurricanes. Seems surprising to me. This year, there's been 12 people who have unfortunately passed away in the U.S. due to lightning. If you hear thunder, you are at risk. Thunder can propagate about 10 miles from a storm, and so can lightning. So you should start to take some precautions once you hear thunder, especially if you're above tree line, which I think a lot of us like to do and be. And stay away from isolated trees, meadows and fields, and near water. Those are high-risk areas. Additionally, if you are up on a mountain and you try to seek shelter in a cave or maybe a rocky area, that is a risky area as well because of ground currents if there's a nearby strike. So the best approach really is to get down low. If this figure were bigger on the right, they've actually tried to categorize the risk. But in general, I've talked about the risky areas, and the safest areas get down to a lower elevation. Also of note, very important, and probably many of us recognize it, thunderstorms are most frequent in the afternoon, so we want to begin our hikes early. There was a couple hikers on Torrey's Peak over the July 4th holiday, and they were unfamiliar with the area. They'd lost their way. They were actually on the phone with search and rescue about 5 p.m., which is pretty late in the day to be up that high. And the search and rescue people heard the lightning strike. It knocked one of the climbers unconscious, and the other one was dazed. And they eventually were rescued by helicopter at the summit of Torrey's Peak or nearby at 14,000 feet. That was a long day for them and a long day for their search and rescue, but it probably all could have been avoided had they been up there earlier. So what do you do if you're caught in a thunderstorm or as it's approaching? The safest place is go back to your car at the trailhead, but that might not be an easy thing to do. If you're caught outdoors and up high, head down to a lower elevation. And then if you are in the midst of a lightning storm, or you've heard stories and maybe you've even experienced it, kind of a tingling sensation, that's an opportunity to assume that position there with your feet together and avoid or minimize ground contact. Some common mistakes: don't isolate near trees or other prominent features. At night in your tent, it's not going to provide much protection. It's got usually conductive poles. They actually say in the article on this website, get out of your tent in the middle of the storm if there's lightning and find a grove of small trees to shelter in. This would not be isolated prominent trees, but smaller trees. That's probably your best protection if you can find it. And avoid using electronic devices. I'll recall the story I just told about the hikers on their phone as they got struck by lightning. Or, hiking poles could be a problem. And it's really not safe until 30 minutes after the last thunder before the storm clears. And another takeaway is, watch the horizon and be aware of those building storms. If you see it, don't be subject to that summit fever. Take the right precautions and get down. So that's all I got. Evan?
Right. Thank you, Tim. Tim is actually leading a trip next month to Handy's Peak and Red Cloud. So we'll have a chance to practice. And trip reports. Zach Baker is going to tell us about trips upcoming and past.
Thank you. We had some trips last month. So the ever popular Pa Rio Ski Hill dinner, you'll notice that there's lots of people on this picnic table. So very recently, the board voted to support the purchase of a new table, an additional table that Rick is going to build, and we're going to add up there so we can support even more people. Sorry. Bill Podorsky led a trip out to Santa Clara Canyon. Doesn't look like very many people, but very beautiful green views. Bill also went out to Cruces, land of fish and easy hikes. Check it out if you haven't been. Zach led the Rubber Ducky trip. 22 people this year. And we got people lost on the way down and the way back up. And there were people in like the middle, right? So it's kind of weird. And we found a rattlesnake, and Tim and I both saw it. And then when we compared descriptions of the rattlesnake, we decided maybe there were two rattlesnakes hanging around the little pool, the spring by Red Dot Trails. So keep an eye on that. Tanya led the big hike out to South Fork. How'd it go, Rick? Was it awesome?
Great weather.
Excellent. Did you go fast? That's good. Michael Altair led a trip. Say some words about it, Michael. Everybody caught fish. Everybody ate fish. Great picture of the fish down there. Pretty awesome. And future trips. So we maintain the schedule for Tuesday, Thursday top roping. This is not technically the Mountaineers event for liability purposes, but you can look on the calendar and there's the schedule there. Ellen is leading the weekly ski hill trips. Bring snacks, bring food, eat dinner. Tanya is leading another ambitious travel trip in August. The Gallina Canyon trip, so due to the Laguna fire, the Gallina Ranch is currently under evacuation order, so that's canceled. It would be really smoky anyway. Another Tanya trip in September. Sounds awesome. Tim and Norbert heading off to the Handies, where you can try to get struck by lightning, maybe get off the peaks a little early. And then August 30th, Bill is leading and organizing a professional trip where there's catering and glamping, and they provide everything for you, and it costs money. So consider signing up for that. It sounds like it's going to be a awesome trip. Also in October, heading out to Utah. No llama trip, but yes, shared house and good times. That's the Moab. And then also in December, out to Bluff again for various hiking. And that's it. Hit the calendar to check out what's in the future. If you see a gap, you can always suggest a new trip and lead a trip. If you're a little worried about leading your own trip, we can assign you somebody that knows what they're doing, and you can lead it together to get practice in leading this sort of thing. There you go. Back to Evan.
Let me grab the phone. So Annie's gone. So my name is Jan. I'm the vice president, and I will introduce Helga. She's been climbing for 6 years, both indoors, outdoors, sport and threat. And I think she will tell us something about some local as well as other destinations. So please, Helga.
Okay, is this on? Yep. Unfortunately, it's a little dark and you can't see my t-shirt, which basically sums me up. I love rock climbing and cats. So that's pretty much what you need to know. But if you like more background, I've been in Santa Fe since 1993, born and raised in New York. I went to Yale for undergrad with a history major and Columbia Law School. Practiced law for a while in New York, and then when we moved here and eventually or quickly went into advocacy work with environmental and animal organizations and lots of legislative work here. So I lobbied for the Sierra Club and various things like that. Greg and I, my husband here, Greg, backpacked and hiked for many, many years until we found climbing, and now basically everything has gone away for the most part. We started climbing in 2019 because we were heavily into doing 14ers in Colorado and wanted to learn something about ropes and how to use those for safety when you were going on to the higher class of 14ers. But we just became so into climbing that we kind of stopped doing 14ers, at least for now. So we started in the gym and went to the New Mexico Climb School in spring of 2019, where we learned what we needed to know and continued to go out with a lot of the mountain club people very intensively this first couple of years. So really got a lot of practice on the ground from with people there who knew what they were doing and learned that way. So this talk is actually called What is Rock Climbing and Where Do You Do It? I don't profess to be an advanced climber or a very technical climber. I am probably on the low end of moderate. Like I said, it's only been since 2019, so 6 years of climbing, and I was not in my 20s when I started. So perhaps, not as far as I would be if I had. What I wanted to do is explain to people who might be primarily hikers, when you're out there and you see people climbing, do you wonder what they're doing? And this came about because I did a BISTI backpack a couple months ago with Los Alamos Mountaineers that Ann was leading. And as we were talking, as we were hiking along, she was asking me questions about climbing and wanted to know more about what trad means and what sport means, and asked me if I would do this talk to describe that to people. And I'm just going to take a break for a minute and take off my shirt because with the light on me, I'm hot. Okay. And I guess I can, just going to stick that in my pocket and we will move along. So, pop quiz. Who knows where this is? Yep. Everybody has seen that, right? And we used to drive past it when we were going hiking and see people who were like, what are they doing? And why? What is going on over there? But didn't look into it until we started climbing. And then we wound up there and we're like, oh, okay, that's what we do. So this is rock climbing at Cattle Call Wall in the Las Conchas area. And before we get deep into it, I'm going to have to look up here. There's a few things I wanted to go over. This is just meant to be an overview, and I am absolutely not trying to teach climbing. I will talk about places climbers go locally and elsewhere. You know, as a lawyer, I have to say, do not try climbing without proper instruction and gear and sign a waiver and so forth. For learning to climb, there's the local gyms, the Y here, and Santa Fe has a gym, and Albuquerque has two. Those are great places to learn. And then go outside with the New Mexico Mountain Club or the, and they have not a climb school anymore, but some skill sessions. And I know you guys still have the climb school through a professional guide service now. I had wanted to do the Los Alamos Climb School, but I never found out when it was for the year until it was too late to sign up. So that's why we wound up with the club. A lot of these photos are taken by my husband, Greg, my friend Leanne Duffy, who is here, and my friend Rupal Patel, who is not here. And you will see many pictures of them as well. And I'd like to thank them and all my other climbing friends who have provided such great times, and going through pictures to put this together was just so much fun. And, you know, I could probably show pictures for 5 or 6 hours, but I won't. So what is climbing? Here you're standing at the bottom of a wall looking up. And what climbing is going up that wall under your own power. It is a vertical-ish wall, and you have a rope on you for protection should you fall, but you're actually going up this thing by using your own hands and feet. And I think that's a pretty awesome thing when you look up at this one's, I think it was 80 feet or something. You know, when you stand back and think about doing that. And then you might wonder, why on earth would you want to do this? Physically, climbing can be challenging. It can be hard physically. It can also be so technical. Little tiny crimp holds that you have to manage to hang on to, and finding what direction you're going. So it's really interesting to be able to look ahead and decide I have to go there or there. And if it is a route that is hard for you, getting to the top is one of the most gratifying feelings I've ever had. You know, I always, or sometimes look at it and say, oh, it's going to be so hard. I don't know if I want to do this. And then I get up and I'm like, wow, that was awesome. And, you know, the more cuts and bruises you come home with, you know, the better day of climbing it was. It's also meditative. It commands my attention like almost nothing else. I've tried meditation and all that. And, you know, I go 1,000,000 miles an hour, and in the space between 2 words, I can have a whole couple of thoughts in there. And climbing actually causes me to think about nothing else. Everything else in the world falls away when I'm climbing. So those are some of my reasons. I put down some of the, I'm just going to have to look because the print on the computer is too small for me. These are the types of climbing that there are: bouldering, top roping, lead climbing, trad climbing. And those are the ones I'll show a little bit about. There's other types called aid climbing, ice, speed, soloing, via ferrata, and mountaineering. I will not be talking about those. You probably are pretty aware of them. And where do you do it? You can go to gyms You can go outside to all kinds of places, a lot of public lands, BLM, National Forest Service, wilderness. There are some private lands, locations where they allow people on. We went to one in St. George, Utah. You had to pay a $20 fee to have access to this beautiful canyon, and no one else was in it but me, Greg, and our two friends. There's the mountains, there's all those big national parks and climbing areas, cliffs. If you're ice climbing, you need ice, which can be in the mountains. It can be ice that is in a valley in Ouray. They spray the mountains with water that freezes to create ice climbs, and there's glaciers. So isn't climbing dangerous? Well, yes, it is. And you will read on every piece of paper you ever see about climbing when you enter a gym or on equipment or signing up with a guide. Climbing is an inherently dangerous sport. And lots of stuff behind that, and then you have to sign saying you acknowledge that. This magazine is put out by the American Alpine Club, and they publish this Accidents in North American Climbing once a year, where they go through summaries of accidents in every state. It is self-reported, so it's not like they are on site finding out about each accident, but people submit things and you can read through it to see what goes on, and they publish totals at the end. And this one was the 2022 version, which I can't find my latest one, but you can see in the US there were 8,600 accidents reported, 7,000 injuries, and 1,800 deaths. This is not considered one of the most dangerous sports. Football and rugby are considered more dangerous. Scuba diving, more dangerous. So they're dramatic, I think, and they are maybe because it's so close to hiking or to backpacking. It's just a little bit more that it might seem more shocking that there's accidents. Free soloing, I think, of course, we understand, but and if you're when we take out trip insurance, you can get regular trip insurance for, most things you do. But if you're doing certain sports, you have to either get an extra level with some companies, or they just don't insure. And those sports include scuba diving, climbing, and high altitude hiking and things like that. So it's dangerous, but it's not the only thing, and it's not off the charts. So this is back at Las Conchas. This was a few weeks ago. We went here with our group of friends, and I wanted to start with the fundamental concept for roped climbing, which is that you have a closed system between the climber and the belayer. The climber, both parties have harnesses where they can attach things. The climber attaches the rope to their harness, and the rope then continues over to the belayer, who has something called a belay device. The rope gets threaded through that, and with that device, the belayer is able to catch a climber's fall and protect them. And ideally, the belayer is also putting a stopper knot in the end of the rope so that there can't be an accident on rappel where the rope slips through the belay device because it was too long or too fast or whatever happens. So it's closed. They're attached and they're together in this. Here are Greg and another friend of ours belaying. Greg is in front, our other friend's in back, and I'm actually climbing where Greg is belaying. And this is what belayers do. They stand there with whatever their dominant hand is on the rope, and their other hand is available to assist as needed. And they pull rope through and they give rope out. And on top rope climbing, which we'll see, they're basically pulling rope in. It's looks like it's relaxed and easy, but the belayer has to be paying 100% attention because something can happen that, if you look away, a climber could fall more maybe than they would have or something like that. The current belay devices do really add another level of safety. And I always think of, if you got stung in the eye by a bee, what would happen if you're belaying? Hopefully you've done it enough and trained enough that your instinct would cause you to grab the brake strand no matter what, but the current devices can help with that. Those are two of the belay devices that are commonly used. A gree on the left, that's the one that really, it has a cam in it. And up here, I would think most people probably understand cams. It's being an engineering and sciencey kind of concept. But the rope threads through it. There's a thing inside that if the climber starts to fall, the cam will catch the rope, and as well as the belayer pulling down on the brake strand. This device on the right is the older style tubular device. It doesn't have quite that kind of feature to it. So the first kind of climbing that I'm going to talk about is top roping. And this is like the entry, not just entry level. You always top rope because you can top rope routes that are like above your skill level in order to get a feel for them and see what you can do and if you can advance your skill. But it's probably the easiest way to start. In this case, the climber has the rope attached. It goes up to an anchor that was magically appeared up there and comes down the other side to the belayer. So you have a point there that the rope is going up through. And if you should fall off while you're top roping, the belayer will catch your fall, and it's from a point. So you're only going to fall for about as much slack or stretch as in the rope. Generally, top rope falls are not bad, unless you hit something, you know, your foot might hit something off or whatever, but it's generally okay. Unless your belayer hasn't been paying attention and has left too much slack in the system, then the fall can become longer. And I do know someone who broke his leg on a top rope fall because there was all this slack in the system. And this is the same on both sides. So on that one, you can see climber, anchor, and belayers below it. Here you can see climber, belayer, and the anchor is up there. Then the next level is lead climbing. In this case, in fact, I'm going to go back to, so the pair on the right, well, the pair on the left, you can see that's the top rope situation. Pair on the right, the climber is tied in and the rope is going straight over to the belayer. That means that it's not going up to an anchor first. The climber will be climbing and taking the rope up with them and placing it in these clips along the way. So falls will occur from that clip point rather than from the anchor. And this is called lead climbing. Okay, so rope is out of the anchor, climber to belayer. So there is the upper, well, you can see it down here too. In the red circle, there is a bolt against the rock, and there is a device in it called a quick draw, and the rope is now through that. That was not there at the outset of the climb. The climber climbed to that point, put that rope in, and then continued to climb. And you can see the next one, same thing, the quick draw, the rope goes through it. Circled on the back of her harness, you can see the quick draws that she's bringing up with her to place along the way. And this climber is named Sean Kwan, and she was with our group this day and demonstrated perfectly by accident because I think I was on the neighboring climb and was able to get these pictures there. So that is, so if she were to fall right now, the clip, the rope is in a clip above her, so that clip would catch her fall. Again, just for how much slack is in the system and stretch. She can, if she's tired at this point, she is fairly safe. It's through a draw. If the holds are good, she can just hang out for a second and then continue. Or if the climber really wants to take a break and take the load off and maybe lean back and look at what's ahead or shake it out or whatever, she can actually call down to her climber at this point to take. And they'll pull the rope really tight and she can lean back and hang out. This is in our yard. We have some bolts set up and stuff so we can practice things. So that is what the bolt looks like on the left. Then I've put the draw through it, the quick draw. Then I've put the rope into the quick draw. And now if I were climbing and I were going past this quick draw, you can see the rope is leading up. That would be leading up with me until I hit the next bolt. Now, in a moment here, she is going to be going above this bolt. And that means between the top of the top bolt here and the next one, she is going to be unprotected. It's not through a draw in a rope, and the rope is not through a draw at a bolt. So for that distance between bolts, the climber is really what we call on lead. And if they fell there, the fall would be longer than a top rope fall because it would be twice the distance of rope between the bolt and where the climber is. Plus slack and stretch. So that's where lead climbing becomes a little scarier if you're scared like I am. And if it is really far between the bolts and the climber falls, and they're almost at the next bolt, but not quite, the fall can be bigger. And also, the belayer in lead climbing is much more active. They have to, once she clipped that bolt, the belayer would be pulling in the slack, but then once they start climbing above it, they're giving slack out so that the rope is moving with the climber and the climber can take it and put it in. And so depending on how much rope is out, that adds to the fall. And this is where belayers really have to pay even more minute attention to what's going on and really develop a feel for it. In this case with lead climbing, the climber will get to the top of the climb and either build an anchor, or most cases in sport climbing, there will be an anchor pre-placed. They can put the rope into that anchor. I'll talk about anchor in a second, but so that's lead climbing's basics. And when you're outside doing this, it's called sport climbing. That means the bolts are there and you're doing this, as opposed to trad climbing. Top roping can be done on a route that has bolts, as long as the rope, there's an anchor, and can be included in sport climbing, but it's more referencing this. So here's an anchor, and anchors, there's whole books written on anchors, but the gist is that at the top of the route, you want to have an anchor so that the climber can be lowered or rappel back down. There are some cases where the climber can top out and hike back down, but most of the time we're talking about building an anchor. On sport climbs, there's often fixed gear there that serves as the anchor. However, among our group at least, we always use our own anchoring material so that we put less wear on the permanent gear so that it lasts longer. There's some reasons why when you might not do that, but that's kind of the general practice. But that's changing now in some places where they're just recommending climbers always just use the fixed gear, because that's one last transition that has to happen and help to prevent some accidents. Because when you're transitioning from, when you climb up and you are, placing your own anchor and putting the rope in, and then somebody has to clean it later, there's just failure points that can happen if people aren't properly trained. Then you might also, and then eventually, depending on how many climbers go, and eventually the anchor will have to be cleaned. And there's a process for that where the last climber knows what to do when they get up there, where they attach themselves with something else to the anchor, clean the anchor, put the rope through the fixed gear, and come down that way. And it takes practice, because it's not something you want to just learn on the fly when you're up there. It's high danger zone if you do that. Quick draws, you might wonder, when the person is placing the quick draws on the way up, how do they come off after? When the climber is coming down, either lowering or rappelling, they can just take them off on their way down, or they can leave them and the next climber does what's called follow, and they go up that path and take the draws themselves. Or sometimes you just leave them because other climbers want to lead climb it. and don't mind having the draws pre-placed. So then when the climber comes down, you pull the rope, the next lead climber ties in and they go up and they don't have to actually place it themselves. They can just place it into the draw that's there. And how do you get down? 3 options. Some climbs you can walk off or down, hike down basically. A climber can be lowered that's where the belayer is managing it. There's a process and a system for that. But basically the belayer is putting rope back into the system through this device. And then the last one is rappelling. And you might know that from canyoneering things that you've done through the Mountaineers. So that's kind of order of danger. Lowering is the most common in sport climbing, but some people still like to rappel a lot. And there are some situations where it's better to rappel. That's Greg up there wondering what's he going to do. This is a climbing gym. This one happens to be in Cortina, Italy. So this is what a gym looks like, holds everywhere. And in a gym, you can top rope and you can lead climb. And it's a great way to practice these things. They have pre-placed all the bolts, so you don't, the draws, and so you don't bring your own draws. They have them tied in there permanently. It's one less thing to do. It keeps things flowing and an extra level of safety, I'm sure, as compared to people placing their own. This gym is super high. It was, I think, 80 feet as well. And, stuff going straight across the roof, like if you were climbing up here, if there were holds all across the planetarium. There are people who can do that, which is not me. Gyms also have autobelays. I'll show you that in this picture. So this is Stone Age. There's 2 Stone Age gyms in Albuquerque. This is pictures from both from their website. The picture on the top left and here on the right are the bouldering walls. And bouldering is another gym activity and outdoor activity. I've done a tiny bit of bouldering, but I don't boulder. Bouldering, the easiest level of bouldering is like a moderate level of climbing in terms of the grading system. And there's no rope, no nothing. You go up and down and sideways and jump onto things, and you learn how to fall, and people who boulder do fall a lot. They're prepared to do it. But it's also tends to be a little bit younger, and outside bouldering can be, in the gym and outside bouldering can be really, really hard. You need a lot of muscle all over your body to be able to execute these boulders. And then the bottom picture has these things called autobelays, which is a way to climb in the gym without having a belayer. It's this where it says clip in. There's, you can see a line going up to a device on top, and you basically clip that into your harness. You start to climb, and when you're at the top, you just lean back and it lowers you. It has a system in there that just lets you down more or less gently. So it's great if you want to go climbing by yourself, or, just get some practice in and don't have to call anyone. Now we're up to trad climbing. And here we have Leanne at the top of a trad climb here in White Rock. Trad climbing is the whole next level. There's no bolts. There's no anchor usually. And you need to bring a lot more stuff than a few quick draws. It's called gear, it's called protection, and when you have all of it, it's your rack. And so basically, you are, again, with the closed system, climber is attached to the belayer, and the climber starts. Trad climbing most often involves cracks because you can stick your hand in there to move you along. And that is where you're going to put your gear. That's going to be the equivalent of a quick draw. A flat face doesn't have anywhere for you to put in a cam or a nut. So you make your way up by doing this. It can be very difficult. Rock is imperfect. You have to get placements right. You don't want to fall and have the thing pull out, because then you're going to fall down onto the next level and that one might pull out, and so on. There's a lot of skill involved in getting proficient at it. And I do a little bit of basic trad. I like to follow. I like to follow Leanne. And you can see how much stuff she has on her harness. You have to climb with a lot more weight on your harness. And I will show you a couple other things. Okay, so here's me. This is in Harris at what they call Ranger Rock. It's very short. I think it's like 15 feet tall. So there's no more than a few moves to go up. But you can see, oh, those shoes I had to get rid of recently. They were great. So you can see the crack there at my left hand and something under it. And in this picture, you can see there's something called a cam in there. So I got to that point. I tried to figure out what size it is, put this cam in, slip the rope into the cam, and that acts similarly to a quick draw. And then you have to go above it. And so on lead climbing, you do go above your, on lead sport climbing, you go above your last bolt, but a bolt is, for the most part, you know, pretty solidly in there. But on trad climbing, you have to go above this, and it, you know, until you really know what you're doing, you can kind of be like, "Ooh, is that going to hold if I fall?" You know, what happens? There's a lot of specifics about the direction and all kinds of things. So it's another level of risk. These are cams. That's what I had in there. We'll see them again in a minute. There it is. So that is a cam held vertically, and you can see where the thumb is. That's a little ridge there, which, so that cam on the left is open. It's not, it's just there. It's not going to do anything for you if you stick it in a crack. Here, in the next picture, that part is pulled down, which closes the cam. Then you insert your cam into the refrigerator crack here between the refrigerator and the wall, put the cam in, release that trigger, and it expands to the space it has, and it exerts pressure. And so then you attach your rope to the cam, and that is your protection. And you'd have to put it in the right direction and the right distance in and so forth. But I even jerked on it, and it, even though like the refrigerator is, you know, really smooth, it held, and it also did not dent the plaster. So you just do that repeatedly going up a climb. And there are some other types of protection besides cams or that we'll see. This is a multi-pitch climb in Red Rock National Conservation Area that I did a couple months ago with Leanne and our friend Rupal. So this multi-pitch is when you're not just going up to the anchor and coming back down. You're going up, setting up an anchor. The belayer, the person who climbed it is the leader. They set up a belay from above, and if you're following, you climb up to them. They then climb another pitch, and a pitch is at most one rope length. And so you successively go up a series of pitches, one after another, building an anchor at each one, somebody leading, somebody following. This one is called Olive Oil, and we had two pairs. On the right here is me and Leanne. She actually led all the pitches, and the last anchor was where she was. She belayed me up to there, and then it was just a two-step scramble. So I came up above, and our friend Rupal over there took this picture. This was her at the bottom of the base of the climb. She was climbing with another friend, so we went two pairs. It's 4 to 5 pitches. We linked 2 of the pitches, so it was 4, with one of them being super long. It's rated 3.5 stars, which in the, like the, you know, just like with movies and whatever stars, it's a 3.5 is a really fun route. If 5.7 is the grade, that's YDS is Yosemite Decimal System, and it's 600 feet total. So this is a full day adventure. Plus you hike there for an hour and you hike out for an hour, and it involves getting there at like the crack of dawn so that you can get on it first. So this is the description of the multi-pitch trad climbing. That's an anchor at a belay station, not on that one, but this is an anchor set up to belay the next person up. To get down from a multi-pitch, 2 options, a walk-off, which wouldn't be down that same route. It's, if you're going up onto a mountain, it's, over to the side somewhere, or a way down that's walkable, maybe not super easy, but doable. Or you rappel down. And because of the multi-pitch, you don't just do one rappel from the top to the bottom. You rappel down to a rappel anchor, the next person rappels, the next person rappels, and you set up a whole new rappel, and you do it a number of times over and over. More time consuming than most walk-offs, or at least some walk-offs. Then we have our climbers' favorite subject, gear. Climbers love gear. Climbers love to talk about gear. If you don't know what to talk to a climber about, ask them something about their gear. So that's me with my climbing pack on, with a rope, and this is set for like a day of sport climbing. So I have my harness, my helmet, the belay device, all the things that I have to bring with me for a day of that, and it weighs 35 pounds. I pack a little heavier because I like to bring a lot of extra layers. I get cold. And you can wear whatever shoes you want to approach a climbing area, but these are called approach shoes, and they have excellent soles so that if you're having to climb over rocks to get there, it has really good grip and they're durable. These went through a muddy canyon on Friday, so they got a little red tinged. That is my harness. And on the picture on the right, you can see a yellow or yellowish green loop attaching kind of the bottom horizontal with the top horizontal. That loop is the belay loop, and that is where you tie the rope to. Well, the rope goes kind of behind it, and that's where you put your belay device when you're belaying. And it's super strong and reinforced, and so all kinds of harnesses. This is just the one I like. I always have a helmet. Some people climb without helmets, but head injuries exist. Chalk bag, and we actually have chalk in them, and that helps you grip the rock. That's my belay device on the left. This one's called a Neox. And belay gloves are pretty common. I wear these. It just helps if the rope has any, like if it got a cactus spine stuck in it, it's better if you have a little buffer, but also just for the friction in the rope and extra help not getting your hands roughed up. And the only reason that matters is because you don't want to drop the rope. We don't care if we get a little roughed up otherwise. These are the other belay devices I mentioned. Those 2 slings, the yellow slings, are anchor slings that I use. So they're regular slings, climbing slings with a carabiner on each end, and you can double them up. So the smaller one is doubled up, the longer one is just the full length. And I bring 2 of those up if I'm setting an anchor. And depending on the configuration up there, which it all looks different, you might use both of them short, you might use one long, you might use them both long, but this gives you some variability. There's also things called cordelettes, which is a pretty thin rope that you bring up, and you can create an anchor out of that. You can use a couple of quick draws. The thing on the right is my personal anchoring system. So if I'm going up and I'm setting the anchor or cleaning an anchor, I need something to keep me on the anchor between, let's say, building the anchor and putting the rope in it, or later, cleaning the anchor out, because you need to be attached at all times. You need to shift your system onto the pass, then to either do the take on or whatever. So there's other systems for that as well, including just slings and that, but I'm used to using this. Those are my quick draws, and we mark all our gear with whatever little mark because it can get mixed up. So mine is those 3 dots. I bring extra carabiners. This is what I use on the right for rappelling. There's a prusik or a hollow block, a couple of carabiners, and my ATC. The ATC is also a belay device, but I use it only for rappelling, or if I've forgotten my real belay device. These are crack gloves. When you're sticking your hands in these cracks, it's pretty rough, and you have to exert pressure on it. and sometimes they're super, super sharp. And if you have crack gloves, it feels better and it's more likely, you're more likely to actually use it the way it should be used because you're not going, "Ow, that hurts." Let's do, you just do it. So the material part, which is either leather or faux leather, protects the back of your hand. And they're great. Crack climbing is great. That's a rope. This is a 60. We also have a 70. There's 80s. There's 100s. All kinds of ropes, all kinds of diameters, materials. And then we always have the rope, or try always to have the rope on a tarp so that it's not picking up all the dirt. It still will get some, but it's better. And then in this case, this tarp folds up so you can carry it around a little bit. So we also have a couple rope bags that open up into tarps. Those are my climbing shoes and Leon's climbing shoes. They're called Muras, and they are great. They have specialized rubber as well, so that you grip, and pointy toes, and the way they fit is very comfortable for me. We tend to wear climbing shoes pretty tight, some tighter than others, and also seem to have a lot of climbing shoes. Like I think I counted the other day and I might have 9 pairs at the moment. And those are belay glasses. So when you're belaying and you're looking up, your neck can hurt, especially at the gym at Stone Age because it's a really tall wall. So these belay glasses have a prism, so you can just be looking forward and it reflects down what your climber is doing, so you can watch that way without straining your neck. And snacks and beverage. And that bottle came from the Albuquerque Mountain Rescue Council, who does climber rescue when there's an accident in the Sandias, particularly. It's this whole major rescue group of people that are trained and skilled in the techniques that you need for rescuing climbers as opposed to hikers. There's a lot more involved with getting somebody off a cliff than a trail. This thing is called a stick clip. On the left is the full stick clip, on the right is the top of it, and they're extendable. Sometimes when you're lead climbing, if the first bolt is kind of high, and especially if it's a hard start, you can use this to get the first bolt clipped into the wall with the rope in it before you climb, so that you have a little additional safety. And they make short stick clips that you can take up the route with you if you expect there to be a point where you might need help. That's all my trad gear. So it's all the cams. There's nuts, there's tri-cams, all kinds of things that people have. And you don't necessarily bring all of this up any particular trad climb, but you might bring it all there with you so you can decide when you get there what you want. Or the more experienced you are, I think you can figure that out in advance and not have to bring everything like when you're new at it. And those are that's all of it on a sling on me. I haven't weighed what that is, but it's not light. This thing is called a nut tool. When you're following a trad climber, often, especially the little nuts, which are just this little thing that you stick into a slot and it grabs, they can get really stuck. And so you use this thing to help wiggle it out and do all kinds of things. We carry walkie-talkies. Most of our group does. These are mountain radios designed for mountain adventures where they have a great range of 1 to 5 miles, all those good things over there. They're really helpful if it's noisy. Like there's one place in Albuquerque called Carnwell, which is right close to the highway, and the traffic noise can be so loud. So if the climber and the belayer have the walkie-talkies on them, you can communicate and actually hear each other. Because even with shouting, sometimes you couldn't. Also, if there's a stream behind you and that's loud, they help. I always carry my Garmin Mini InReach or InReach Mini in case I have to make an SOS call. Then there's a question of where do you go climbing? There's this handy dandy site called Mountain Project that lists climbs everywhere. And this is the front page. You could go to a list of all the climbing areas in New Mexico, and that's them. And then each of these drills down and drills down. And then you get to the individual climbs. This is for one that's here in White Rock, and it tells you the length, the grade, some tips about it, maybe comments. It's user interactive. And so now we're places that we climb. This is El Rito up north. There's 3 areas there: El Rito Sport, El Rito Trad, and Little River Wall. And this rock is called Conglomerate. Here we have Leanne and Greg, and a little furry creature that joined us one day who was climbing the wall so slowly and such little progress compared to ours, but ratio wise, probably great. We had a lot of fun watching him. And you do see good wildlife and flowers and birds and, all kinds of fun things out there. That again is Las Conchas. This is a different kind of rock. Very popular area. Rabbit Rock is right off of, what's the number on the highway here? The one that goes in front of Las Conchas and Valles Caldera. This is right on that road. It's a little, you can see on the right side, even where the hill goes up, that's where the road is, and it's just tucked in there. We had fun there last weekend or 2 weekends ago. Cabales Canyon is up by Vadito, kind of Penasco area. And you can see this rock is different. It's more kind of striated and laid in and out, wavy. This is Socorro. Greg and I love going there. It's just in the box area, southwest of the town. We camp there. We lay out gear there. There's a few trad climbs and lots of sport climbing. This is even a little further. This is called Luna Park. This is actually not quite the climbing area yet. It's the drive-in. It's the San Mateo Mountains. It's really gorgeous. And I love every time we get to this point. And you can see looking down on the climbing area, looking out. So that's always good for a long weekend. Diablo Canyon, Santa Fe. Sandia Mountains. Couple different climbs in here and views. It was cold one day. We had to have hoods and everything on. More Sandias. This was from climbing the Thumb, which I did a few years ago with Leanne and another friend, and we're down climbing. So first you have to hike down the La Luz, then you climb up to the top of the Thumb, then you have to down climb from the Thumb, and then you have to hike back up La Luz. So it's full on. White Rock again. Lots of good climbing here in White Rock and Los Alamos. Los Alamos is harder climbing. I don't climb here. I climb in White Rock. Maple Canyon, Utah. We've been going there yearly for a few years now, and that's Rupel, who I've mentioned over there on the left. This is also conglomerate, but you can see how big the pieces are compared to Maple Canyon. It's a totally fun area. It's a beautiful canyon. We go for a week. We camp. You get there, you park your car, you just walk to the climbing spots. You don't have to drive. It's shady. There's trees everywhere, red rocks. It's just gorgeous. And that's more there at Maple. So you can see again, that's a route we're climbing. Here I am starting out. The right picture is where I'm starting out. We had stick clipped the first bolt, and then I was going to lead it. That's a little bit further up. And really with climbing, what you're doing is looking for places to put your feet that you'll be able to press into and stand up. The power comes out of the feet. Sometimes it's very small. Sometimes it's just a little grain of something. Sometimes you just smear against the rock. But that's your main thing, is to look for feet and places for your hand. You're not trying to pull up, even though at the beginning especially that happens a lot, and on occasion you just have to. But you still need a place to put your hand to help balance you and keep you to the wall. And there can be really big holds that are called jugs. There can be little things called crimps, pockets, side pulls, underclings, so many varieties. And so when you're lead climbing, you're looking for, where am I going to put my feet? Where am I going to put my hands? Okay, make the move, make another one, get the rope into the next draw. And that's a view from further back of me being at the top. And here's Greg doing it. You can see here, he's getting up, and in the middle picture, he's reaching for his quick draw. And then he's placed it, and now he's reaching for the rope that he's going to put into the quick draw. Joshua Tree, we did a little trip a few years ago, me, Leanne, Rupel, and another woman. I don't have really climbing pictures, but that's all slab climbing. So we went there to learn the slab climbing technique and practice some trad skills. And this is me and Greg in Iceland, where we did do 1 day of ice climbing. We haven't ice climbed here. You have to go to Ure, and that's where it's wet and drips. And, you know, it just seemed too far to drive. And I didn't want to take on a whole other thing. But this was a 1 day guided thing that we did with, and it was so much fun. It's on this glacier. So it's not actually cold out. It's like, you know, 50 or something. The glacier is going to stay frozen, you know. So it wasn't miserable. And it's ash is the dark spots on the glacier. So first we had to hike to the spot with crampons. And that was a whole interesting learning thing, to, especially going downhill on ice, and to trust your crampons in doing that. And then we did, there's climbing. So ice climbing involves ice axes and the crampons. And here Greg was being lowered. We lowered into a hole and then climbed out. And this is Red Rock. This was another trip. So Red Rock has this multi-pitch trad climbing as well as single pitch sport climbing, and it's beautiful. You can see this rock again. This is sandstone. Then Greg and I were in Italy. This is the Dolomites near Cortina. And this was a we were with an organization, or a climbing company, a guiding company based in Portland, Portland. And they do a lot of trips within the US, but also some international. And so there were about 8 of us climbers and 4 or 5 guides. And it was a lot teaching us the skills, but then also doing the climbing. And it was really lovely. It was a weird year because it was hotter than normal. And they had like real thunderstorms like we have. And so they weren't used to that, but we had to do those climbs really fast to get down before the storms. And one day we couldn't even climb, and that's how we wound up in that gym in Cortina. Just a beautiful view. They have lots of these refugios where we stayed at one. And so we hiked up to the refugio and then climbed for 2 days up there, just 10 minutes from the refugio. Also massive amounts of hiking between the refugios and the chairlifts that go up and down. It's definitely not wilderness there like, you know, I was used to here. Just lots of people. There's bikes, there's climbers, there's hikers, there's these things, there's the vehicles, you know, servicing the refugios. So it was busy. And that's on another one. This one was particularly interesting because these are trenches from one of the world wars. The Dolomites were used during both wars because it was the border between Italy and Austria. And so there was a lot of action in there. And so we saw trenches as well as the remains of like a hospital. And there's tunnels that are dug through. We had to hike through a tunnel to get to one of them. So it was a history lesson while climbing. And this is our last place, Oman in the Middle East. Greg and I went there before going to India one year, and we did a via ferrata, which is another climbing thing. And a via ferrata is when they place these rails going up a mountain with sometimes you step on the rock, sometimes there's metal rungs put in that you step on. So it's a way to get up. You clip into these rails with those carabiners that would catch you if you fell down. It's a very different feeling than climbing, actually. I kept wanting to climb on the rock, and the guide kept saying, no, put your feet back on the, you know, on the steps. But it was really cool and fun. They're big in Italy, there in the Dolomites, because that's actually where they were started. The soldiers had to build things in order to get over the mountains all the time. And so there's a ton of via ferratas over there. And now we're getting them here. I know Ure has a couple, and somewhere else in Colorado that I can't remember. Oh, Telluride, and elsewhere. So you don't have to be a climber to do a via ferrata. And I was at the top. That's my Instagram account if you want to see any other climbing pictures, and travel. We just came back from the Arctic and we're in Antarctica last fall, so all kinds of pictures. That's all I have. So if there's any questions. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, it was very quiet before. Now it's really loud. I do have a question for you just to get things started, which is the guiding companies that you found in the various locations you went to. How did you find them? How did you source them? What made you decide to go with them?
Mm-hmm. So the one for Italy came about by somebody I know at the Santa Fe gym who came in one day and said, "Oh, I'm going to do this great trip to the Dolomites with this company out of Portland. You guys should come." And I looked it up, and she is somebody who is very thorough in research and concerns for safety. And she had done a short, trip to Joshua Tree with them. And so I trusted her judgment. And then, as it turns out, Rupel knows that company from when she lived in Portland. So that's how we chose. And the guides that we had in Italy are like really like professional climbers who get sponsored, and one of them is kind of pretty famous. So really top-notch people. In Oman, I just found the Via Ferrata guide. We also did canyoneering there with him, just by searching around on the internet for, I don't even really know how I came across them. And you know what they just it was the qualifications of their guides that made me decide on them. They had the full qualifications, trained by the European system of guiding certifications. Ice climbing. We went to Iceland right as it was opening it up from COVID. So it was July 2021. And, you know, so I heard it on NPR one day that Iceland is open to tourists. And I'd always wanted to go, but thought, oh, it's so crowded. And then when I heard that, I'm like, ooh. So looked it up, got good airfare, and said, you know, looked at various sites and saw advertisements for there was climbing as well. Oh, I think I went looking for climbing. But then it's a toss up. We can climb at home. We can't do the Iceland stuff at home, but the ice climbing seemed like something that, you know, we couldn't do a glacier ice climb anywhere in striking distance from here. And that company happens, I think also it was like the only one I really found that, and they were not even open yet, but they decided because of COVID, but they're like, okay, we could still do it. And so they pulled one of their guides into service to take us out. And the Joshua Tree guides there were Rupel's friends. She knew them from when she lived in California.
Got it. And last question for me, which is, where are you climbing next? Do you have any future travel climbing plans?
We have two plans. Ideally going to Maple Canyon again the first week of September, though there's some ifs about that. And then in October, going to Red River Gorge in Kentucky.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, question.
So the question was, did we come across any crevasses in Iceland when we did the ice climbing? Nothing like super deep scary, but I do remember one where we had to be either on that side or on that side and not too close because you don't know where it's going to give. That was where we were hiking around with him to look for where we were going to go, for that place where we were practicing, actually. Right, true, actually, yeah. Where I said Greg was being lowered into the climb, that was a crevasse. Like we got lowered down into it and then climbed out of it. But, and it was narrow, but like, you know, maybe from whatever this wide would be, a yard, something like that. It was really fun. Yeah.
Perfect. If we have any more questions, here's your chance. No worries. All right. So I just want to give a round of applause one more time for Helga. Thank you so much for.
And thank you for having me. It was
Yeah,
fun.
thanks for sharing your adventures, and I hope everyone has a good night. And we'll see you at the next meeting.